Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're gathered today on the 16th day of the second month, which is forgot it already, which is the 21st day of counting the Omar, and that happens to line up with the 25th of April, 2026 on the Gregorian calendar. And we're continuing with our segue. We will get back to our chronological reading, Father willing. But in the course of a conversation we were having before we started, I thought it would be pertinent to go over this chapter or these events in First Kings chapter 13 with the Man of Elohim. We recently had gone over the importance of actually doing what his word enjoins for us to do and how that produces the fruits of righteousness in us. And we read a few things from the common scriptures and the book of Gad the seer that covered those points. This one is going hand in hand with that and a little bit in line with what we were talking about before we started recording, where you have to have the Ruach first off to be able to be led into all truth. Without the influences of the Ruach dwelling in you, there's no possibility you can have wisdom, knowledge, power, might, understanding, or comprehension, because these things are of the Ruach. And when he's taken the Ruach from you and you have the adversarial spirit in you, you get spiritual blindness, stupidity, laziness, anger, vileness, and unprofitable characteristics or influences from him. Now, you have to have the set apart Ruach again to be led into all the truth and be able to comprehend these things. But you must take what the word as you are given it, and you have to meditate on it and do the things that he said to actually have it bear full fruit in you. So the two go synonymous together, and I don't want it to be misconstrued where we're not mentioning the spiritual or ruachni aspect of this today. So we're just talking about in this chapter, and for our regard here, is that as you hear the word, as the word of Yahuwah is given to you, is what you must abide by. And it's not what someone else tells you that they've heard from the word. It's put in the narrative of the story we're going to read, but it had a very significant effect on me. And I think it's very important for all of us who profess belief to follow this principle so that we don't have the same problems coming after us. But this is First Kings chapter 13. Jeroboam's hand withers is what that's called. Um, it's in the course of the narrative here, which the story itself is not important for our regard at this point. It's what it represents in regard to the word coming to a man of Elohim and how you respond to him or to someone else and the cause and the effects of it, okay? So it says, and behold, I could read the Hebrew here, and I always like to have that. It's really not for our purposes today. I'm going to try to keep that out, but I do want to point out here's an example of the defective spelling where you have this dot as the wa or the o here, and it's replacing an actual letter. Originally, when they would write this out, they would always have the wa there, but eventually they did this with Elohim and many other words where they have defective spellings. They remove one of the vowel letters and they just put a vowel point instead. They do it for almost every name in Scripture. They do it for titles like Elohim and for other words as far as I'm aware, but I don't know all of them. The vowel letters were known and used in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they were known after those times as well. So it's not a new phenomenon, but because this happens in the name Yahushua, many people wrongly believe that it's just Yahusha, and that's to their detriment. If they were to look into the full and defective spellings right here, it would help alleviate that issue. But it says, and behold, the man or a man of Elohim went from Yahuda by the word of Yahuwah. Okay, Debar Yahuwah. And this is a title for our Mashiach. It says in Revelations that he has a name that no one perceived except himself, and his name is called the Word of Yahuwah. And when you go back and you look at all the references to the Word of Yahuwah, it was the voice of Yahuwah in the garden, for example, the Kara Yahuwah, but it was the Word of Yahuwah that what came and presently spoke face to face with Moshe, was present and spoke to every foreteller, right? He appears to men, and that is our Mashiach, who is what we'd call pre-incarnate at that time. It says, and he went from Yahuda by the word of Yahuwah to Bethel, and Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. And he cried out against or upon the altar by the word of Yahuwah, and he said, Altar, altar, thus says Yahuwah, behold, a child shall be born to the house of Dawid, Yoash Yahu. It says Josiah here, and I don't know why, but this is Yoash Yahu. They say Yoshiyahu, which quite possibly could be where we get Yoshi in Japanese or the Oriental languages. I know there has been a large influence of Hebrews that migrated to Japan. I believe there was a number I'd read somewhere of over 100,000 of them. And that's where you get the words that are related to Hebrew in the Japanese language that I believe Dr. Isaac Moseson does an excellent job in his books on showing the connections between many different languages, and Japanese is one of them. But that's aside, that's for a different thing. Either way, Yoash Yahu by name, foretelling the one who would come, and he shall sacrifice on you Eth, the Kohanim of the high places. And this is the judgment of our Mashiach. Boom, he's saying this is his over them, right? Who burn incense upon you, and the bones of men shall be burned upon you. And he gave in the day that, Hahu means that, it's literally the he, right? The he, because Ha is he. But it say, in the day that the sign saying unto you, this is the sign which he has spoken Yahuwah. Surely, or behold, the altar shall be split apart, and shall pour out the ashes that are on it. Wayahi, this is the same as in the beginning. These verb tenses are used, but and it came to be, they put so it came to pass, but and it came to be when heard kismoah, right? But kashama, when kashama, when heard, that's interesting. Shema is to hear, but you put the kaf in front of it, it's to like or resemble. So when you heard eth the word from the man of Elohim, or the Ish Ha Elohim, this is where it has Ha Elohim again. We mentioned that if this is a title, the Elohim is plural. It's not translated in English like that, as you can see, but that's talking about the Father and the Son, the Elohim who appears as a man, who's the messenger in whom Yahuwah's name dwells, where the Father is always pleased to dwell in him, right? But the this is the man of Elohim, a physical man, but the Elohim is what I was talking about there. So he says, and when heard the king Eth the word of the man of Elohim, who spoke or cried out upon the altar in Bethel, and he stretched or he sent Yashalach or Yishlach, Jeroboam Eth yado, his hand, from the altar, and saying, Arrest him, and withered his hand, which he stretched out toward him, and so not he could pull it back to himself. So it withered and it stuck in place, right? And the altar was split apart and poured out. The ashes from the altar, according to the sign which had been given the man of Elohim, or the Elohim. The Ha Elohim, that's another one. I'm sorry. They keep saying the Elohim, which we've mentioned before, but it's quite often they will put the on the ends of words when it should be with the man of Elohim. That could be why they put it there for part of the usage in the word. It's a little backwards from what we use in English, but English is a corruption of the Hebrew. It's a living language that has changed over time, much like German, Celtic, and even the modern Hebrew, how it differs from the classical biblical Hebrew. It says, and answered the king and said to the man of Elohim, Please entreat now eth the face of Yahuwah, right? Your Elohim. See, he doesn't acknowledge him to be his Elohim, but he calls him your Elohim. And pray for me that may be restored my hand to me. So entreated the man of Elohim eth the face of Yahuwah, eth pene Yahuwah, and was restored Yod the hand of the king to him, and became as before, and became ke bereshana, as before. Literally, Rishon. So, Kaf as be Rishon, as in the beginning, right? Or as in the first. And the word, and he spoke, the king to the man of Elohim, Come eth, that they have is with me, with me. That's a great example. I've mentioned to you before that the word eth, aleph tau, became the English word with, and you find many examples of how the aleph, the ayin, and the gutturals, the guttural letters, would have a W prefixed or put on them in the use or in the change from the Hebrew to the English over time. This ati became with me in English. Another example of that was now. We just looked at that. Where is it? Here we go. It says, please entreat now. The na is noon aleph, and that aleph has a W connected with it in the English, so it's now. That's all that happened, but it's still the exact same word with the exact same meaning. Either way. It says, come with me home and refresh yourself, and I will give you a reward. But said the man, oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to click that. But said the man of Elohim to the king, if you were to give me half your house, never, lo, never, I go with you, and never I eat bread, and never drink water, excuse me, in this place. For so command with me, so command with me, that eti, the word of Yahuwah, saying, never shall you eat bread, and never drink water, and never return by the same way that you came. So he went by in the way Acher, or another, and not did return by the way which he came, or which he came in to it Bethel. That pathak right there is not really in the original text. It's used later on to end a sentence in the modern Hebrew. Just for anyone that's ever been looking at the Tanakh, trying to learn the language and not quite figuring out what that pays for, it's put at the end of sentences or at the end of a chapter there, a section, if you will. So right here, and the foreteller, wa nibi, and the foreteller, an old dwelt, right? This is achad. That should be one, not un, like alone, one. But this is a false prophet. We find that out from the Dead Sea Scrolls and other writings, and from Josephus as well. Plainly says he's a false prophet because he lies. And a foreteller only speaks the truth in the word of Yahuwah. Deuteronomy 13. Okay. But it says, in the foreteller one old dwelt in Bethel, and he came his sons, and they and they recounted unto him all the works which were done by the man of Elohim that day, or Hayam, in Bethel. Eth Hadebarim, eth the words which Debar he spoke to the king. And they told their father and said to them, and they told their father, and he said to them, their father, which way did he go? For had seen his sons eth the way had derek, which Helak he went, or which went the man of Elohim, who came from Yahuda. And he said to his sons, saddle for me, or unto me, the donkey. So they saddled unto him the donkey, and the donkey was what the false prophet was riding on that went to the man of Elohim that led him astray. A condition for their times they were living through, as being shown in the narrative, quite like what we see in the kings and presidents of every country today, even, or in the father in every household, right? But you see the truth walked out in an echo here, right? Just as Balaam, who was also a false prophet, rode on a donkey that spoke to him at that time, a condition of the people during their time. This is when they were in more of an apostate state, an apostate condition, if you will. So they saddled for him the donkey, and he rode on it, or upon it, and went after Ish ha-Elohim, the man of Elohim, and found him sitting under the terebinth. And he said to him, are you the man of Elohim who came from Yahuda? And he said, Ani, I am. And he said to him, Lek, come, ethi, with me, habeta, home, and eat bread. And he said, no, never can I eat return, and never can I, this is ukol, is be able at any all. It's his all, literally, or he will all, but they has cannot. So never cannot return with you, nor go in with you, neither can I eat bread nor drink water with you in this place. For I have been told, right? Ki debar Eli, for the word unto me from the word of Yahuwah, never to eat bread and never to drink their water, nor and never to return by going the way that you came in. And he said to him, Gam ani too I, a foreteller, as you. Wamelech, and a messenger spoke to me. How many times do people talk about having messengers or angels or visions or whatever, and they try to get people to listen to their dreams or visions, but it says something contrary to what is plainly written. there's whole chapters condemning that kind of thing in scripture. Then he said to him too, I am a foreteller as you, and Amalek spoke to me by the word of Yahuwah unto saying, Bring him back with you to your house, that he may eat bread and drink water. He was lying. Kihes. Kihes. Right? Deceive, deny, dissemble, fail, deal falsely, found to be liars, meaning he was a false prophet, according to Deuteronomy 13, because he professes to speak in the name of Yahuwah, and he's saying something that's not true. Okay? So he went with him and ate bread in his house and drank water. And it came to pass as they sat at the table, and it came, right, and it came to be the word of Yahuwah to the foreteller who had brought him back. And he cried out to the man of Elohim who came from Yahudah, saying, Thus says Yahuwah, because that it has because, right? Because for as much seen then, whereas, right? Yayan. So whereas because you have disobeyed the mouth of Yahuwah, my mouth or the mouth of Yahuwah, um, usually if this was to be the mouth of, it would have a sere yod, like bene is the children of, but this is pi, so it sounds more like my mouth. I don't know why they do that, but it's translated as the word here. It should literally be mouth. Right? So you have disobeyed the mouth of Yahuwah and never have kept the commandment which commanded Yahuwah your Elohim. So commanded you, Yahuwah your Elohim, but you came back and ate bread and drank water in the place of which the word unto you not to eat. This is a different means not. The lo is a stronger. It's literally supposed to be like never. They don't have it translated this way at all here, but that's how it was. Yeah, see, never. Either way, it essentially the same, but it has a stronger connotation. To not do something means that it's conditional on occasion. To never do a thing means there is no reason why you should ever do it. So it says that you should not eat bread and not drink water, and never shall come, or so he says, because you have done what I told you not to, right? Not never, this is the response to him now, because you've done that, never shall come your corpse. Okay, your dead body to the tomb of your fathers. And it came to be after he had eaten the bread and after he had drunk that he saddled unto him the donkey, unto the foreteller whom he had brought back. And when he was gone, and met him a lion on the road or in the way, and killed him, right? And muth and dead him, right? Made him dead. And he was a corpse thrown on the road, and the donkey stood by it, and the lion stood by the corpse. And their men passed by and saw the corpse. Okay, he caused that to be. He claimed it as his own. It's a work he did just the same as the heavens were made. Okay, he foretold it, and it came to be. It says, and their men passed by and saw the corpse thrown on the way, and the lion standing by the corpse. The lion, I don't know if you're all familiar with it. We've already read these things, but the lion is of the tribe of Yahuda specifically, and of the kings. The four lion or the three lions on their heraldry, or the red lion for the line of Zerah, are different emblems to show the lion of the tribe of Yahuda and the monarchy and how they would be towards people. They're also equated to being like the sea monsters or dragons against the people in the Testament of Yahuda. And I do believe it's mentioned, um, there might be something to that in Baruch or Ezra, but I know specifically that the asp of serpents is equated to the king of the Greeks in the Dead Sea Scrolls as part of the Peshars and the interpretations there, or just another connection in that kind of vein. But the lions tearing apart the foretellers.
Brother, I also have something to bring up. I know this is not complete Shabbat stuff, but with the Persian people right now, like in Iran, they're trying to bring back the flag they're putting. It's the lion and the sun. So, that is the tribe of Yehuda that had gone to the Persian Empire a long time ago when, Medo Persia took over. But
Yes.
it was the remnant of it because they're trying to put that back now with this thing going on with Iran that to be the lion and the sun.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And just for context with what he was mentioning, you can find in Bereshit in the book of Yobelim that the kingdom was going to be given to Yahuda. And even it says, everywhere the soles of men's feet tread, he, specifically Yahuda, would have sons ruling in that area. Doesn't mean over everybody, but it means that literally his children would be all over the world ruling in some capacity, which has literally been fulfilled in the course of history with all the monarchs through Europe, the presidents in America, and most monarchs or presidents in other countries. You can see the prominence of that happening in Esther, where she is of the tribe of Yahuda, of the a cousin to the line of Dawid there, and she marries the king of Persia. Their children are now going to be the rulers of that country. That happened quite often in a multitude of places everywhere they went. You can see it in the ancient history of Caledonia, and then the I want to get the title right, so please forgive me, but it's the 1-2 combination. You have to read the ancient history of Caledonia to see that Hebrews left Egypt and founded Troy. And then you have to look at a book about the ancient kings of Britain. I'll give you the title right now. It is called The History of the Kings of Ancient Britain, and it's an abridged version by Manly Pope. But that is a Welsh document that records their monarchs from the beginning of the founding of Lud, or the Britons, all the way through to Cadwallader. And it takes the survivors of Troy that were paganized and how they went from Troy to Rome or Italy, and then eventually Brutus went from Italy, freeing some Trojan slaves in Greece, and then went over to first Spain and then Britain, where he founded Lud and became the king of that country. And then the Caledonians eventually went over to Scotland, as we call it today. You had other sons of Zerah throughout Greece, Spain, and eventually northern Africa, Carthage. There, Dodo, remember, Dodo, the first queen of Carthage, I think, was the first queen, not the first person to have any place there, but the first queen came over after the fall of the Northern Kingdom, and she was related to Isabel, if I remember correctly. Not a direct descendant. I don't think any of their children survived like that, but at least we don't have record in scripture. But to continue here, This is the effect of disobedience to the word as he heard it and listening to someone who lied to him. I'll start over again right here. It says, and their men passed by and saw Eth, the corpse, thrown on the road, and Eth, the lion, standing by the corpse. And they went and told in the city where the foreteller of old, or the old foreteller, dwelt in. Excuse me. And when he heard the foreteller who had brought him back from the way, and he said, the man of Elohim it is who was disobedient to the word or to the mouth of Yahuwah. Therefore was he delivered, or therefore has delivered him, Yahuwah, to the lion. That is the conditions of it's what the Dark Ages are all about. If you look in Revelation, the 10 kings that broke up that kingdom and the little horn coming up from them, it says that all those kings are doing Yahuwah's will to fulfill the purpose of his heart by giving their authority to the little horn. And so think about the 30 Years' War, all these things that were going on. It's because the people, the man of Elohim, didn't listen to the word as it was given to him. Consider this for a moment. It says, and delivered him, Yahuwah, to the lion, and which has torn him and killed him, according to, or as the word of Yahuwah, which spoke unto him. And he spoke to his son, saying, saddle for me, or unto me, Eth the donkey. So they saddled it, and he went and found Eth his corpse. Notice that he was still his. He didn't complain, didn't argue, grumble. He went and fulfilled the word according to him, right? Just a condition. Just like the thief, we might make mistakes. We're going to pay the consequences for them, but that doesn't mean that we're outside of the purview of his favor. It's not an ideal situation, but neither is turning from the words we're given. So when he went and found Eth his corpse thrown on the road, and the donkey and the lion standing by the corpse, not never had eaten the lion Eth the corpse, and never torn Eth the donkey. And took up the foreteller Eth the corpse of the man of Elohim, and laid it on the donkey, and brought it back. So came to the city the foreteller, or the old foreteller, to mourn and to bury him. And he laid Eth the corpse in his own tomb, and they mourned over him, alas, right? He says, alas, my brother. And so it was after he had buried him. This is something that I don't know if we pointed out before, but a lot of the times in the original covenant writings here, you'll find that the Aleph Tau is put before men and people's names. They say it's a pointer, but I would contest that it's a direct sign of being in covenant with the Aleph Tau and him being with you. You find it taken away from Edom after he sells his birthright, for example, and you find it given to Ruth after she marries Boaz. So there's different examples in its usage in the text that we don't quite see in the English. It says, and after he had buried him, that he spoke to his sons, saying, when I am dead, then bury me in the tomb where the man of Elohim is buried. In beside his bones lay Eth, my bones. For surely will come to pass the saying which you cried out by the word of Yahuwah upon the altar, that in Bethel and against all the shrines on the high places which are in the cities of Samaria or Shamarun. And remember, he foretold that all the false prophets or all the people making offerings on them would be burned on them. Their bones would be burned by Yoash Yahu. So to prevent his bones being burned, he wanted to be having his bones mixed with the foretellers here. which actually came to pass because when Yoash Yahu brought up the bones to burn them, he left both in there for the sake of the man of Elohim. While his bones weren't burned, that didn't save the man from his poor choices. He still has to pay the consequences for his sins, just like everybody else that's unrepentant. It says after this, or after the event, this, or after this event, never did turn Jeroboam from his way of evil. But again, and he made from every class of people, or the people, Koheni, priests for the high places. Uh, the name for high place there is Bahama, or Bama, they call it Bama, which Bama is actually a few places too in the Saxons of the East and of the West. This word is mentioned as names of places to where they had migrated to, especially over in the Orient. I can't remember off the top of my head all of where it was at exactly, but I thought it was interesting because it's still called places the high place there. But here it looks like in death, which is interesting, but not the translation there. It says, and he made from every class of the people priests for the high places, whoever wished, right? Whoever desired, he consecrated at his hand, and he became of the priests of the high places. And was the thing this the sin of the house of Jeroboam, so as to exterminate and destroy from the face of the earth. Now, this doesn't mention that all the sons of Louis had left the area. It mentions in a few places where it gives distinction that there were 9.5 tribes and technically 2.5 tribes in the land, but 9.5 in captivity or with the northern kingdom, because half of the sons of Louis went into exile with the northern kingdom, and half stayed in the land that were already there with the others. But they were not all officiating or doing service appropriately, and anyone who wanted could become servants to the contrary of the truth, though. It says, and this thing was the sin of the house of Jeroboam, so as to exterminate and destroy from upon the face of the land, or the ground, ha-adamah. All right. Now, ob willing, you can see don't really want to get into all the details of what that represents in the plain text of the narrative there. We're going to get to that as we read it. But for our purposes, I'm hoping that you can see, as a man of Elohim, has the word come to him, and as you comprehend the word yourself, as he speaks to you, you can't deviate from that because someone else has a different word, especially if it's directly contrary to what you know from what is written. I think that there's a few other places that we can cover real quick that will go along with that. If you give me just one moment, I'll look that up. Shalom all. This is a post from 2016, so about 10 years ago now, but it's from a series of scriptures on who we should listen to and what we should do to learn truth and the importance and reasons for staying in scripture and not other writings that are contrary. So it kind of goes hand in hand that as the word is given to us, we must abide by it, but this is how to determine what is truth. Because you will have examples where our sister was telling me Yoash Yahu, or Josiah as he's called in English, is an example of someone who the word came to him, someone told him not to do a thing, and he went and did it anyways, and it was didn't work out well for him. But um there's a little bit of a difference there. The word came and he went contrary to it, for one. And we go over the reasons why that was allowed to happen in just a little bit, but we talked about it off the recording there. However, we're going to read that account because it's a great example of someone who's zealous for the truth and obedient and the power that has in the capacity you're able. And then what happens, irregardless of your willingness to be obedient, if everyone's not for it, it's not going to work out to everyone's benefit because we have a righteous judge who knows everyone's heart. But right here, It says futility, futility, says Kohelet, or the preacher, the assembler. All is futile, and besides being wise, Kohelet also taught the people knowledge, and he listened and sought out, set in order, many proverbs. Kohelet sought to find out words of delight and words of truth rightly written. The words of wisdom are like goads, and his nails driven by the master of collections. He says, do you kick against the goads or against the pricks? He mentions Shaul, right? Do you kick, you buck against the words of the wise? And as nails driven by the master of collections, they were given by one shepherd. And apart from these, my son, be warned. The making of many books has no end, and much study is wearying of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commands, for this applies to all mankind. For Elohim shall bring every work into right ruling, including all that is hidden, whether tov or whether evil. That's from Kohelet chapter 12, verses 8 through 14. And then this is really the 1-2 punch right here, where you stay in his words. Then the other witness to this would be in the apostolic constitutions underneath the commandments for men and women, specifically under the commandments of men on what to read or what books to study, which is to, and it tells us to abstain from any heathen writings, period. What do we need that for when we have all the wisdom, knowledge, history, and might in his words of truth given to us? But this is from the Recognitions of Clement, Book 3, Chapter, what is that, 62? Life of the Nazarene. Yet Kepha said, who is he that is earnest toward instruction, and that studiously inquires into every particular, except him who loves his own ruach or inner being to deliverance, and renounces all the affairs of this world, that he may have leisure to attend the word of Yahuwah only? Such is he whom alone Yahushua deems wise, even he who sells all that he has and buys that one true pearl, who comprehends what is the difference between temporal things and ageless, small and great, men and Yahuwah. For he comprehends what is the ageless hope in the presence of the true and Tov Yahuwah. But who is he that loves Yahuwah, save him who knows his wisdom? And how can anyone obtain the knowledge of Yahuwah's wisdom unless he is constant in hearing his word? Whence it comes that he conceives a love for him and venerates him with worthy honor, pouring out hymns and prayers to him, and most pleasantly resting in these, accounting it his greatest damage if at any time he speak or do aught else, even for a moment of time, because in reality, the inner being that is filled with the love of Yahuwah can neither look upon anything except that what pertains to Yahuwah, nor by reason of love of him can be satisfied with meditating upon those things that it knows to be pleasing to him. Yet those who have not conceived affection for him, nor bear his love lighted up in their mind, are as it were placed in darkness and cannot see light. And therefore, even before they begin to learn anything of Yahuwah, they immediately faint, as though worn out by labor, and filled with weariness. They are straightway hurried by their own peculiar habits to those words with which they are pleased. For it is wearisome and annoying to such persons to hear anything about Yahuwah, and for that reason I have stated, because their mind has received no sweetness of Elohim's love, or El-breathed love. The original, he translated as divine. All right, and then we'll do one more. We've read this before, so I don't want to go over the whole thing. Um, but I do encourage you. I'll try to share, maybe I'll copy and paste this whole thing in the comments if I can, or the description so you can read through it. Okay? But it really differentiates on who to listen to and when we should determine between a false prophet and a true foreteller. It even goes through the things to determine how you confirm what is true in the word. And there are, I think, 5 or 6 points that Kepha goes over that can all be used to as a litmus test for it. It says, Rejoice in Yahuwah always. Again, I say, rejoice. And remember, we get the benefit of it by doing the thing that he said, right? Constant in the word, singing hymns and prayers, being grateful. Think about how Hermas is in the narrative of what he was doing, right? So rejoice in Yahuwah always. Again, I say, rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to all men. Yahuwah is near. Do not worry at all, but in everything by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to Elohim. And the shalom of Elohim, which surpasses all comprehension, shall guard your hearts and minds through Yahushua, or Mashiach Yahushua. For the rest, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is righteous, whatever is clean, whatever is lovely, Song of Solomon, right? I sing to the one I love, Yeshayahu. Whatever is lovely, whatever is of good report, if there is any uprightness, if there is any praise, think on these, and what you have learned and received and heard and saw in me, practice these, and the Elohim of Shalom shall be with you. So if then statements, right? If then, right? Yet I rejoiced in Yahuwah greatly that now at least your concern for me has revived again, though you were concerned but had no chance. Not that I speak concerning need, for I have learned to be content in whatever state I am. I know what it is to be humbled, and I know what it is to have in excess. In any and every situation I have learned both to be filled and to be hungry, both to have in excess and to be in need. I have strength to do all through Mashiach who empowers me. Another example of this, to be content in whatever situation you are, look at Job as a testament to what we ought to do, right? And just as I was mentioning to our sister earlier, we can't control what other people say, what they do, or anything else in this life, but how we comprehend the word given to us, how we behave, how we choose to speak, think, and act, all we can control. Every bit of that we have power to conform ourselves to his will or not. And if we do that, we're not going to be complaining, right? We're going to be like Job in situations, which I encourage anyone, if you have not read the book of Job in the Septuagint version, you should do so because you'll see how much more in line it is with the good news, with the bits and pieces that are not in the Masoretic text version that were removed for whatever reason. But this is from Josephus or the Antiquities of the Yahudim. I can't give you the exact book right here, but this is chapter 4, starting with section 1. We're just going to read through the account of Yoash Yahu real quick. I'd like to show you what it says about his works, the fulfillment of the foretelling there, and then his particular disposition. Why, and then we'll also cover why. We mentioned it, but we weren't recording at the time. Why it was that he suffered and why it was allowed to happen. So it says this Amnon or Ammon imitated those works of his father which he insolently did when he was young. So he had a conspiracy made against him by his own servants and was slain in his own house, when he had lived 24 years, and of them had reigned 2. But the multitude punished those that slew Ammon, and buried him with his father, and gave the kingdom to his son Joash Yahu, who was 8 years old. His mother was of the city of Boskath, and her name was Yedidiah, or Yediah, or Yedidah, sorry, Yedida. He was of a most excellent disposition and naturally virtuous, and followed the actions of King Dawid as a pattern and a rule to him in the whole conduct of his life. And when he was 20 years old, or sorry, 12 years old, he gave demonstrations of his religious and righteous behavior. For he brought the people to a sober way of living, and exhorted them to leave off the opinion they had of their idols, because they were not Elohim, but to worship their own Elohim, and by repeating on the actions of his progenitors, he prudently corrected what they did wrong. So, by exhorting them by what is known in the history of their forefathers, right? By reading the events of the Torah to them or going over what he knew to be there, right? He prudently corrected what they did wrong, like a very elderly man, and like one abundantly able to comprehend what was fit to be done. Now, as a young man, he's telling them the stories of their forefathers and the things that were going on so that they can learn that what they were doing was unprofitable and the correct course of action. It's a double whammy. Not only is he young and not offensively accusing anyone, but he's discreetly trying to correct mistakes. This phenomenon is directly mentioned. Um, I want to say it's in the Apostolic Constitutions. But talking about how to, and in Sirach, it talks about how to address things in a discreet manner, or to be wise in how you go about things, and to do things in such a way that people learn without being directly accused. Because the word will convict us to our heart. It's not other men that have to do that. The truth stands on his own. He prudently corrected what they did wrong, like a very elderly man, and like one abundantly able to comprehend what was fit to be done. And what he found they had well done, he observed all the country over, and imitated the same. And thus he acted in following the wisdom and sagacity of his own nature, and in compliance with the advice and instruction of the elders. For by following the laws it was that he succeeded so well in the order of his government. Because he was obedient, it worked out well for him. And in piety with regard to Elohim's worship. And this happened because the transgressions of the former kings were seen no more, but quite vanished away. For the king went about the city and the whole country, and cut down the groves which were devoted to strange Elohim, and overthrew their altars. And if there were any gifts dedicated to them by his forefathers, he made them ignominious, of no nobility, of no account or regard, and plucked them down. And by this means he brought the people back from their opinion about them to the worship of Elohim. And while this is commended to him, it was not a willing thing of the people of their own volition. He also offered his accustomed sacrifices and burnt offerings upon the altar. Moreover, he ordained certain judges and overseers that they might order the matters to them severely belonging, or severally belonging, meaning he established the Sanhedrin or the eldership as it's commanded for it to be done, and have regard to justice above all things, and distribute it with the same concern they would about their own soul. He also went over all the country, and desired such as pleased to bring gold and silver for the repairs of the Hikkel, according to every one's inclinations and abilities, no compulsion. And when the money was brought in, he made one Maasayahu, the governor of the city, and Shaphan the scribe, and Yahuab the recorder, and Eliakim, the high Kohen, curators of the temple, and of the charges contributed thereto, who made no delay nor put the work off at all, but prepared architects and whatsoever was proper for those repairs, and set closely about the work. So the temple was repaired by this means, and became a public demonstration of the king's piety. But when he was now in the 18th year of his kingdom, he sent Elikam the high Kohen and gave order that out of what money was overplus he should cast cups and dishes and vials for ministration in the Hikkel. And besides that they should bring all the gold or silver which was among the treasures, and expend that also in making cups and the like vessels. But as the high Kohen was bringing out the gold, he lighted upon the set apart books of Moshe that were laid up in the Hikkel. And when he had brought them out, he gave them to Shaphan the scribe, who, when he had read them, came to the king and informed him that all was finished which he had ordered to be done. He also read over the books to him, who, when he had heard them read, rent his garment. That in the Hebrew, usually that word for a garment is baged, where we get in English baggy, the baggy clothing that you wear, or how it camouflages or covers. It means to deceive and to cover or to camouflage in the Hebrew, but in English it means baggy, as opposed to similak, which is to be tight-fitting clothing, where we get the word similar, right?
I have a question. What about the baguette? It's a
Yeah, it means deception. So when he tears his garment, the word is also meaning to be deceiving or to beguile someone. So when the picture there is when he rent his garments, he's tearing apart his being deceptive.
so
That
so when I eat a baguette, I'm going to be. I'm kidding, but for real, like that's what their bread. So
oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Context there. I don't really know where that bread name came from. I'd have to look into it.
right.
Baguette. I'll have to thank you for that. I'll have to check it out. This is, and he called for Elikam, or Eliakim, the high Kohen, and for Shaphan the scribe, and for certain of his most particular friends, and sent them to Huldah, the prophetess, or the female foreteller. Just a moment. Uh, you tear bread to take a piece, so that is interesting. Like I'll look into that. We'll see where it comes from. Thank you for letting us know, though. So Huldah the foreteller, the wife of Shalom, which Shalom was a man of dignity and of an eminent family, and bid them go to her, and say that he desired she would appease Elohim and endeavor to render him propitious to them, for that there was cause to fear, lest upon the transgression of the laws of Moshe by their forefathers, they should be in peril of going into captivity. So he read those words and realized the condition that they were in, and now he's asking for propitiation. That is a very reasonable thing to do. And I'm not sure how many of us have actually read these words and feared not only the condition of our country, but what we ourselves have done to cause our own captivity, and of being cast out of their own country, lest they should be in want of all things, and so end their days miserably. When the female foreteller heard this from the messengers that were sent to her by the king, she bid them go back to the king and say that Elohim has already given sentence against them to destroy the people and cast them out of their country and deprive them of all the happiness they enjoyed, which sentence none could set aside by any prayers of theirs, since it was passed on account of their transgressions of the laws, their high-handed disobedience, right? And of their not having repented in so long a time. While the foretellers had exhorted them to amend, and had foretold the punishment that would ensue on their impious practices, which threatening Elohim would certainly execute upon them, that they might be persuaded that he is Elohim, and had not deceived them in any respect as to what he had denounced by his foretellers. And yet, or that yet, because Yoash Yahu, the fire of Yahuwah, was a righteous man, he would at present delay those calamities, but that after his death he would send on the multitude what miseries he had determined for them. And because while he was pious, the people were not amended in their heart. So these messengers, upon this foretelling of the woman, came and told it to the king, whereupon he sent to the people everywhere and ordered that the Kohanim and the Luim should come together to Yerushalayim, and commanded that those of every age should be present also. And when they had gathered together, he first read to them the set apart books, after which he stood upon a pulpit, possibly of wood, kind of like the picture of Dawid before, and it's a type of our Mashiach. All right. He stood on a pulpit in the midst of the multitude and obliged them to make a covenant with an oath that they would worship Elohim and keep the laws of Moshe. A lot of people want to say it's just the Ten Commandments, and a lot of people want to say it's every single thing throughout all of it. But if you go by what the text says itself, it tells us very plainly, and this is in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that the intelligent in every age will search out diligently the written words that were given to look at what laws are applicable for them to do them.
And isn't there also always a standing man? Because that's,
The standing man doctrine, that was in the recognitions of Clement. I do believe that there is a mention of it in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but I'm not as familiar with that as Brother Jackson was.
yeah. Okay.
If you know where that part's at, though, you can let me know or let everybody else know.
I do. I'll go look for it.
All right, thank you, brother. And just the standing man concept, like it was like our Mashiach, the one to whom everyone strives to reach, or the Kohen or the king that is the type of the mediator or intercessor, where you have the man who is committed, who's killed another in a city of refuge. He has to stay there so that the man, the avenger of blood, doesn't kill him. He can't go to his own home until the Kohen dies, and then that man is forgiven and able to return to his own home. There's a picture in these things as well, but that's like the standing man, where everyone he stands for the people. You have the one to whom everyone is kind of following. And while that is fully typified in Yahushua, that is it is appointed for that is the position of a king or the Kohen over the people. Every overseer was supposed to be the image of Mashiach to the people, the intercessor, the mediator, the type, because that's how he established it. It was supposed to be a type and picture for those things as well. And yes, just like how there's always a remnant, which it's not because of our righteousness or anything that we have done as a people, but only because he said he destroys nations and brings down peoples, and he will ruin those that commit things, but he will not fully destroy the seed of Jacob. So while the nations that we are in or around will fall, while the peoples in every place can fall as a nation for what they choose to do, he will not completely take out the people of the children of Jacob, because he gave his word to 1,000 generations of those who love him, right? There's always going to be that remnant that has not bowed the knee to Baal. But my point here is you can't literally take everything in the Bible and say that's only the law of Moshe and that's all you have to follow. Some things don't apply anymore. Every physical sacrifice we're not supposed to do those. They're now the offerings of our lips and the things that are enjoined within the renewed covenant context of tithes, if you will. But that's part of the studiously looking into these things and keeping all the applicable laws. Um, Chapters 20 through 23 are generally the common law. All of that is still how you love your maker and how you love your fellow man if you've done something offensive. So if you've stolen from another, you can't just say, I'm sorry. You have to pay it back to propitiate the sin. And if you won't willingly do that of your own volition, it'll happen in a different manner if you're his. It's axiomatic. He will correct the things in this life that have to be. Says, accordingly, they gave their assent willingly and undertook to do what the king had recommended to them. So they immediately offered sacrifices, and that after an acceptable manner, and besought Elohim to be gracious or favorable and merciful to them. He also enjoined the high Kohen that if there remained in the temple any vessel that was dedicated to idols or to foreign Elohim, they should cast it out. So when a great number of such vessels were got together, he burnt them, and scattered their ashes abroad, and slew the priests of the idols that were not of the family of Aharon. And when he had done thus in Yarushalayim, he came into the country, and utterly destroyed what buildings had been made therein by King Jeroboam, in honor of strange Elohim. And he burnt the bones of the false prophets upon the altar which Jeroboam first built. And as the foreteller Yadin, who came to Jeroboam when he was offering sacrifice, and when all the people heard him, foretold what would come to pass, viz., that a certain man of the house of Dawid, Joash Yahu by name, should do what is here mentioned. Imagine you're literally accomplishing these things, and then you get to the part of scripture which is talking about you literally doing the thing that you're doing. How encouraging is that? Have you come across any part of that for yourselves yet? And it happened that those predictions took effect after 361 years. That's according to Josephus or Yahusuf here. Whether or not that's completely accurate, I can't say one way or another. And after these things, Joash Yahu went also to such other Yisraeli as had escaped captivity and slavery under the Assyrians, meaning of the descendants of Manasseh and Ephraim. This was during the time where the Scythians were throughout the land of Asia and actually conquered it for 23 years. But they kept the Passover with him. It's mentioned in the scriptures as well. It just doesn't call them Scythians, but Scythiopolis was named from them after this time. It says, and persuaded them to desist from their impious practices and to leave off the honors they paid to strange Elohim. This was also foretold by Yirmiyahu, where it says, return, backsliding Israel, and I shall redeem you. I shall look favorably upon you. So the ones that had repented did return, and they kept the feasts, literally in fulfillment of those foretellings. And then, as an echo, we're going to do that in a larger scale, or even are doing that now. It says, but to worship rightly their own El Shaddai and adhere to him. He also searched the houses and the villages and the cities out of a suspicion that somebody might have one idol or other private or other in private. Nay, indeed, he took away the chariots of the sun that were set up in his royal palace, which his predecessors had framed, and what things soever there was besides which they had worshipped as an Elohim. And when he had thus purged all the country, he called the people to Yarushalayim, and there celebrated the feast of unleavened bread, and that called the Pesach. He also gave the people for paschal sacrifices young kids of the goats and lambs, 30,000, and 3,000 oxen for burnt offerings. The principal of the Kohanim also gave to the Kohanim against the Passover 2,600 lambs. The principal of the Luiim also gave to the Luiim 5,000 lambs and 500 oxen, by which means there was great plenty of sacrifices, and they offered those sacrifices according to the laws of Moshe. While every Kohen explained the matter and ministered to the multitude, and indeed, there had been no other festival thus celebrated by the Hebrews from the times of Samuel the foreteller, and the plenty of sacrifices now was the occasion that all things were performed according to the laws, and according to the custom of their forefathers. So when Joash Yahu had lived, or when Joash Yahu after this lived in shalom, nay, in riches and reputation also among all men, he ended his life in the following, or in the manner following. And I want you to, I don't know what it says there. There were certain chariots wherein the horses dedicated to the idol of the sun or to Molech, which idol might be carried about in procession and worshipped by the people. So those were taken away and burnt with fire. But here is the part that we were talking about a little bit. Yoash Yahu dies. While he's walking perfectly, he has tragedy happen to him. And the reason for that is the same reason why Dawid was enticed to number the people. The people themselves were not worthy of staying in continuance. It was already foretold that they would be taken out, and it was only while he was with them that that calamity was being stayed. So, knowing that, the people in their hearts could have truly repented and had that last a much longer time. But please remember, if he's not impartial with anyone. If he's going to judge the people and have their kings follow a course accordingly, it's going to happen all the time, or it's going to happen none of the time. It happens with the man over his own house, and it happens over every nation today, especially those over whom the good news has been given, because he rules the world. But here we go. Nico means to strike, by the way, to slap in the face. Like the Nicolaitans is a kind of a related, it's to conquer the people. But Nico is to strike with the open hand in Hebrew. How Joash Yahu fought with Necho, king of Egypt, or Pharaoh, and was wounded and died in a little time afterward, as also how Necho carried Yahu Ahaz, or the strength of Yahuwah, who had been made king, into Egypt, and delivered the kingdom to Yahoiakim, or Yahuwah will stand, or Yahuwah will rise. And lastly, concerning Yirmiyahu and Yechezkiel, or Ezekiel. So we might not read all of that, but just concerning here the end or the this last state of Joash Yahu, who, if you desire to be in a position of leadership, whether you're a man of a household or in a position over any regard, there's instructions on how you ought to be. But you also have to keep in mind that those under your authority, when unruly and not walking right, will cause you to stumble. You cannot walk free while those underneath your authority are walking in inequity. You're gonna reap what you sow eventually there. Look at Eli as an example. Look at what happened with Dawid and his children. And that was something that he had to go through because of what he chose to do, right? And just as what you can see in the Shepherd of Hermas, where specifically the conditions that you can see as Dawid over the kingdom in Kings and Chronicles, where he numbered the people and then the plague happened to them. Hermas was enticed to think about a woman that was not his wife so that correction could come upon him because of what his family was doing, his children and his wife. This is now Necho, king of Egypt, raised an army and marched to the river Euphrates in order to fight with the Medes and Babylonians who had overthrown the dominion of the Assyrians. for he had a desire to reign over Asia. Now when he was come to the city Mendes, which belonged to the kingdom of Joashyahu, he brought the army to hinder him from passing through his own country in his expedition against the Medes. Now Necho sent a herald to Joashyahu, and told him that he did not make this expedition against him, but was making haste to Euphrates, and desired that he would not provoke him to fight against him, because he obstructed his march to the place whither he had resolved to go. So you see, this is a condition. Remember when Moshe was fighting against the Og of Bashan and the Amorites and the others? He didn't go and just start attacking anybody. He went and sued for peace, asked to go through without offense or problems. And it's when they attack him, even when they were going into the land, they were to sue every place for peace first, if they would submit, and then they would not be, except for the ones that were meant to be under the ban. Every other people, if they were to fight them, they were given conditions of peace first. They were not to be aggressors in any capacity. This man is declaring plainly that he's not fighting him. So Yoash Yahu becoming an aggressor is what allows him to fall. Okay? And that's because it's contrary to the word. But Yoash Yahu did not admit of this advice of Necho, but put himself into a posture to hinder him from his intended march. I suppose it was fate that pushed him into this conflict, that it might take an occasion against him. For as he was sitting, his army in array, and rode about in his chariot, from one wing of the army to another, one of the Egyptians shot an arrow at him, and put an end to his eagerness of fighting. For being sorely wounded, he commanded a retreat to be sounded for his army, and returned to Yarushalayim, and died of that wound, and was magnificently buried in the sepulchre of his fathers, when he had lived 39 years, and of them had reigned 31. But all the people mourned greatly for him, lamenting and grieving on his account many days. And Yirmiyahu the foreteller composed an elegy to lament him. Uh, Sorry, I was looking at there's a footnote down here, and I was reading the wrong one. But it says whether Josephus from Second Chronicles 35:25 here means the book of Lamentations of Yirmiyahu, still extant, which chiefly belongs to the destruction of Yarushalayim under Nebuchadnezzar, or to any other like melancholy poem now lost, but extant in the days of Yahusuf or Josephus, belonging particularly or peculiarly to Yoash Yahu, cannot now be determined. It seems to imply that it would have been a eulogy to him specifically, just like Dawid made one to Shaul and his son, which is extant till tells time or till this time also. Moreover, this foreteller denounced beforehand the sad calamities that were coming upon the city. He also left behind him in writing a description of that destruction of our nation which has lately happened in our days, and the taking of Babylon. Nor was he the only foreteller who delivered such predictions beforehand to the multitude, but so did Yehezkiel also, who was the first person that wrote and left behind him in writing 2 books concerning these events. We don't have 2 books from him at all. We have multiple scrolls from different dates from one book that was compiled that's not in chronological order. And then there is mentions of other writings in the Dead Sea Scrolls, presumably here the second book. But there's also other writings from Daniel and other foretellers. Now these 2 foretellers were Kohanim by birth, but of them Yirmiyahu dwelt in Yarushalayim from the 13th year of the reign of Yoash Yahu until the city and temple were utterly destroyed. However, as to what befell this foreteller, we will relate it in its proper place. All right, and that's all there was to that one. I thought that there was a little bit more to commend that talked about Yoash Yahu right there and his works, but perhaps that was in a different writing. However, Father willing, you're able to see studiously following his word can still not save you from having issues, most particularly when you have those under your care who are not doing right themselves, whether you're a king or a dad or a widow, if that's the issue with you, right? But these are just things for us to think about in conjunction with what we've already talked about. When you in simplicity will do what you know to be written, he will be with you. He will help you to comprehend. The Ruach will dwell in you, and she will lead you into all truth. Everything that his word says will be, most especially if you just abide by it in simplicity. You come to him like a child, and he will do these things. It's an amazing thing. I'll give you an example in my own life. When I read Numbers 15 and it came across the point of the Zitziot and the reason for it, I said, there's an answer to my problems. My personal ailment of having issues with my memory. I've talked about it before, but we'll go over that in some other time. Point being, when I realized that if I had the Zitziot on the knaf of my garments and I had the blue thread and I was to look upon it, his word promised me that I would not only remember his words, the commandments he gave me, but it was with the intent of doing them. And after I wore Zitziot in simplicity like a child, just doing what he said, I have never had issues retaining or recollecting his words to mine or other people's benefit because his word is true. It's not because of anything special on my part, I can assure you. But with that, I think that's all we have for today. So you all have a great Sabbath, a great Shavua Tov, and we will talk to you next time. Shalom.